Psych with Mike and Brett is now a book. Psych with Mike and Brett, A User's Guide to Being Human, is our new book that's available at Kendall Hunt, Barnes & Noble, and on Amazon. Pick up a copy today and leave a review. Also, find us on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast. That really helps us out. Now, it's time for Psych with Mike and Brett.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike and Brett Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan.
And this is Brett Newcomb.
And we have a book out that we would love for people to pick up and read and give us feedback on. It is available at Kendall Hunt. It's available on Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. And we will have links for that in the description below.
Well, the reason that I want people to pick it up and read it is because my part of the book talks about my perception and understanding of what therapy is and how it works and when it can be helpful.
Yeah.
And so if you are a therapist, check your understanding against mine.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a client who's considering therapy, check it out and see if the therapy that you're considering fits with that description as well. Your part of the book is something totally different,
Yeah.
so I'll let you speak to that.
Well, my part of the book is basically what we do here. You talk about clinical things and your perceptions about how to do good therapy, and I talk more about the neuroscience aspects of biology, of psychology. But my hope is that those things blend well as I think they do on the show, and that people will read that and they will feel like it's very balanced and that they get two different perspectives on the same topic, and that it gives them a better understanding of themselves and other people.
Yes, absolutely. And gets them so excited that they want to give it to everybody they know.
Absolutely.
Remember that we used to, in our business, talk a lot about a term called codependency.
Yeah.
And there was a joke. Why does a codependent always buy 2 copies of a self-help book?
One for them and one to give away.
One to give to somebody that really needs
Yeah.
it, and one to put on their shelf to read later when
yeah.
they get around to it.
Yeah. Well, actually, that is wonderful. So,
So buy 2 copies.
All of you, buy 2 copies. If one is good, 2 is better.
Absolutely.
But we did want to talk about this idea of codependency. Obviously, this is a topic that has been in the zeitgeist of psychology forever, since the early days of psychotherapy. And I think that it's a term that a lot of people either misunderstand or don't really appreciate. So for the sake of our discussion, what would you say codependency is?
I would say it's not a clinical term. So
Okay.
start with what it's not. It's not in the DSM.
So
it's not a label.
it is
that can
not a
be assigned.
diagnosis.
It's a generic population term
Mm-hmm.
that became popular. A lot of people started writing about what they called codependency. When I first encountered it, it was an outgrowth of writings about dealing with the adult children of alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
So people that were studying alcoholism and treatment of alcoholics found similarities in many, if not most, alcoholic families.
Right.
Things like you never talk outside of the home. You keep the facade or the image that we broadcast into the community in place, and whatever happens at home, keep your mouth shut about it. Don't talk.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
And alcoholic families were chronic you'd show up, you apply for a job somewhere, you apply for health care, you apply for some situation where you have to fill out forms, and they want information about your family. And they'll ask questions about, healthcare questions. Anybody in your family have cancer? Anybody in your family have heart problems? Anybody in your family have this, diabetes, whatever? Children of alcoholics couldn't answer those questions
Mm-hmm.
because they never had that information
Right.
about the family, the extended members of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Right.
And they'd be like, how can you not know that your grandmother died of cancer?
Right.
Well, nobody ever told me.
And I actually talk about that in the book, that
yeah.
our family never disclosed anything like that, and I come from a classically codependent family. But
I come from a classically alcoholic family.
well, one of the things that I don't know that people always recognize is that prefixes and suffixes on words actually mean something.
Yeah.
So ology, psychology, sociology,
Yeah.
biology
Study of.
is the study of. Exactly. So ology is the study of. Co means also.
Yeah, like comorbid.
Right. So
I'm depressed,
comorbid.
but I'm anxious.
Right.
Yeah.
Codependency means dependent also.
Yeah.
So people who are codependent are essentially riding the same horse that the substance abuser is riding. It's just that their payoff is something different.
So again, when I first started working in the field, and this became something that I was involved with, I learned all of this is related to being an adult child of an alcoholic. And so there were books that listed characteristics and behaviors and identifiable elements. And then you'd be sitting in a room with somebody and be running through all these things, and you'd be like, oh my God, what we're dealing with here is adult children of alcoholics. And so you're an adult child. And they would look at me and go, no, nobody in my family ever drank. There was no alcohol abuse in my family. And you say, oh, you're just in denial. That's one of the major criteria. So I've checked that off here too. You're in denial about it. Well, that became such a widespread controversy in the field that finally therapists started hearing it. And they said, well, wait a minute. Not all adult children of alcoholics are codependents.
Right. And not all codependents come from alcoholic families.
I'm saying it backwards. I'm wrong. We would say, if you're codependent, you're an adult child of an alcoholic.
Right.
And so what we were learned was not all adult children of, not all codependents
are adult children of
alcoholics.
Right.
So the label was misapplied.
Yeah.
So we're trying to switch it over and say, okay, here are the criteria that define codependency. Elementary one being lack of boundaries, conflict avoidance, the need to please somebody else, basically to give your identification as okay. I give my okayness to you. And if I'm codependent, I will give it to somebody that is congenitally unable to give it back to me. So I'll give you the ability to tell me I'm okay. You tell me I'm okay. And the best I'm going to ever get out of you is, well, you're okay, but except for. And so I don't get a clean stroke. I get a partial stroke. I like having you around. You're a decent employee because you sweep the floor better than anybody else in the house. But you're lousy at this and that and the other. You don't meet my needs appropriately. You don't take care of what I want to have taken care of. You really are inadequate, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep you around. So codependents chronically move from relationship to relationship by giving their okayness away, and they don't ever have it for themselves. They're never able to stand in a place and say, by golly, you know, what Stuart Smalley used to say, I'm okay, and by golly, people like me. Yeah. There was a character on Laugh-In years and years ago.
Saturday Night Live.
Oh, thank you. I never watched it, so I don't know.
When I talk about codependency, whether I teach it or I am talking to clients, I always talk about it in terms of a communication disorder. And the reason that I talk about it that way is actually because of you.
Because I'm codependent.
Because you presented to us in graduate school this concept called the drama triangle by Kaufman. I forget his first name. But the drama triangle is a way of explaining the dynamics within which this codependency plays out in families or in organizations. And so in the drama triangle, there's a victim, there's a persecutor, and there's a rescuer. And the rescuer is the codependent. And the codependent is going to try and facilitate the rescue of the different people that are a part of the dynamic as a way to gain strokes for themselves.
So the triangle, those three identified positions, is a trap.
Right.
And the players in the triangle just rotate from position to position. If you are in the triangle, you will eventually play all three roles.
Exactly.
You will be the rescuer, you will be the abuser, and you will be, what's the other one? I've
the victim.
Lost it. The victim, thank you. The only way out of the triangle is to quit playing.
Right.
And so...
and to be perceived as a persecutor, because...
Knowing that to quit playing,
Right.
the cost is going to be that everybody else, all the other players, are going to look at you and say, you're the one that's ruining our family.
Because
you're the one
changing
that's
the
destroyed
rules.
our family. Because you aren't playing anymore. Now we can't play. So our way of interacting with each other, and it's like music. You can hear the first 2 or 3 notes of a song. If I were to ask you, Mike, do you know the words to this song? And you said, no, I don't. I don't know those lyrics. But if I start playing the music, you can start singing the song. And you can only sing this stanza. But if I play the next stanza,
Right.
you'll sing those words. So you do know the music. You just don't know that you know the music. Well, codependency is like that. If we're caught in a codependent triangle, when somebody starts the music, we all start dancing.
Absolutely.
And we move to our positions as they are assigned. And as need occurs, we rotate. We change positions. So I'm going to rescue you today. Tomorrow I'm going to persecute you because you made me rescue you. So,
Right.
And then I'm going to be the victim because you don't understand. Nobody ever understands. I'm really trying to do this for the family. And you just go around and around the circuit. So the only way to stop that is to stop being on the triangle. But if you try, everyone is going to invite you to come back. And everyone is going to say, it's your fault that we can't play anymore. You know, you took the ball and went home. You bat and your ball and your glove and quit playing baseball with us. We really missed that. Come back and play. And you say no. Well, then they're very subtly going to say, "Well, it's a spring day. I got some time at the park. Let's go." You know, they have very delicate skills at inviting you to come back and play just a little bit. Let's play one inning. But if you bite that hook, then you're back in it, full blown.
And you know, when we look at communication, all of psychology says that the best, most efficient, most effective form of communication is what's called a dyad. So two people engaging. So you and I are currently in a dyad. We are talking back and forth. We are expressing to each other and to the audience this.
It's a twosome.
Yeah. But what happens is that psychologically we don't feel comfortable with that because we want somebody to gang up on. And so we form either realistically or unrealistically triads. So the family of origin, mom and dad, are not getting along. The easiest thing to do is to focus on the kids failing grades. And a lot of times children will supply the fuel for those fires. They will engage in behaviors that cause them to be the black sheep so that they can withstand or have the ire of the dyad cast upon them as a way of diffusing the anxiety in the situation.
I'm laughing because as you described that, I'm remembering so many scenes in my childhood where my parents would be angry with each other and stop speaking to each other.
Yeah.
And my mother would find me and say, "Go tell your dad that dinner is ready." And we'd all be in the same room.
Yeah.
And Dad would be sitting there. But he wasn't listening to her. He wasn't talking to her. And so I said, "Dad, dinner's ready." And he would say, "Go tell your mother that I'm not hungry." "Mom, Dad's not hungry." But they wouldn't talk to each other. In the same damn room. So I'm running back and forth doing what they tell me to do. Well, and this could go on for days, and you could feel the tension in the air. The room would just be heavy with repressed anger and rage and frustration. And so at some point, without ever talking to each other, without ever planning an intervention of any kind, one of them would decide, I had misbehaved in a way. I had done something or not done something I should have done appropriately and attacked me. You did a lousy job at this. The other one would chime in, "Me too, kid. I agree. You're a bad kid. You did this. Let's beat the hell out of you." So they would. And then they go off holding hands like they were together again. And they never ever talked about what caused them to be upset with each other. They only agreed that I caused them to be upset because I didn't find a resolution that worked. And that was my job, although it was unstated and undefined.
And
it
that's
happens all the time.
And I think that's where the misconception, as you talked about originally, that codependency was something that exclusively happened in these washed out alcoholic families, because that is the perfect description of the kind of communication dynamic that happens in those washed out alcoholic families. But it can happen anywhere. I would argue, and I tell my clients and my students this all the time, I would argue that probably 80 or more % of all human communication, at least in Western society, is this kind of drama triangle triadic system. And that is the definition of codependency. So if you relate to how Brett described this dynamic playing out in his family, then you lived in a codependent situation, whether people were actively using drugs or not.
I remember we'd sit at the dinner table and they would throw out hooks for me to bite. And one of them would be like, "I got a call from school today and you're in trouble." And I'd say, What happened?" "Well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
You know what
it's
you
going to
know what
go
you did.
better for you
If you
just confess, if you just tell me. Now, I had a brother, and my brother, God bless him, was such a sucker.
Mm-hmm.
He would bite that hook every damn time. And he would say, well, was it this? And he'd tell something that he'd done that he shouldn't have done. I was late to class, or I skipped class, or what have you. And my dad or my mom would say, no, it wasn't that. I knew about that, but that's not what I'm upset about. You know what I'm upset about, and you need to tell me because you need to come clean. And my brother would look at me like, the hell are they talking about? And I'd look at him just, I don't know. And they'd say, well, both of you. And I'd say, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything wrong, and they didn't call about me because I was ready to throw him under the bus. And then, so he'd volunteer. Well, was it this? I spent my lunch money on candy. Oh, no, it wasn't that. And you just keep going until he basically confessed everything that he had
All of
done
his
that he
sins.
knew that he had done wrong, until they finally thought the well was dry. And then one of them said, that's it. That's what it is. That's what I'm upset about. And now the consequence is going to be, and it'd be punishment. And the other one would be like, yeah, punish that kid. And if I could do it, I would just escape invisibly out of the room. Sometimes they say, well, let's punish them both. You know he did it too. And then I'd say, I didn't do that. And they say, well, this is for something that you did do that we didn't catch you on.
Right.
You did enough. So get over here. You're going to get a beating too.
Or you at least thought about it. You thought about it. It occurred to
Get
you.
that look off your face, boy. I know what you're thinking.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, they play those games all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to them, it wasn't a game. That was the way they communicated.
Yeah.
That was the dynamic.
And it is existentially real
Yeah.
because what happens in a family where this dysfunctional triadic communication dynamic is challenged, what happens to the family? It dissolves.
Yeah.
It disintegrates because the family can't exist with the two primary players actually trying to talk to each other and trying to process their own pain, their own shame, their own guilt. They don't have the equipment to be able to do that. And so the only way off of the triangle is, as you've said, to stop playing and let everybody else see you as the bad guy because you've changed the rules. The problem is that a lot of times that isn't one of the major players. It's not one of the power players, right? In your family growing up, your mom and dad were the power players. Right. You really weren't. I mean, you might have power because you could manipulate them.
I became a more skilled player than any of them, but that took a lot of work and effort. So what happens is that somebody does become a more skilled player, and they either remove themselves from the dynamic or they find a way to change the dynamic. And that's what we hope for, and that's what therapy is supposedly helpful for. How can we change our interactive dynamics in this family so that we're not listening to the script? And what I tell people, what I believe passionately, is you can consciously, deliberately, intentionally change the script. It'll always play quietly in the background, but you can write a new script, and you can act and behave and communicate according to the terms of the new script whenever you are conscious and cognitive and deliberate.
Right.
But if something shakes the rails, if something jars you off base, you will reflexively go back to the old script.
Right.
And it'll start to play out again.
And in the book, you talk about that like an old style answering machine that has the two tapes.
Yeah.
The outgoing message, which you can't
never change. You can just turn the volume down. But it's there for the rest of your life, and you will always hear it. So I always hear, you're not smart enough to go to college. You're too stupid to go to school. We're not spending money to help you go to school. It's a waste of money. You're a loser. So I hear that script. I know intellectually it's an inaccurate script.
Right.
But when I get knocked off balance, when I get hurt by something that comes out of left field that I wasn't expecting, I hear that voice. I hear my dad. I hear my mom say those things to me, which I know aren't reflections of me. And
I'm getting a little verklempt because, and I didn't actually tell this story in the book. I'm not really super proud of it. But, I was told that by my mom and my dad when I wanted to go to college. But I was also told that my senior year by the principal of my school who wanted to expel me, and my mom begged him to let me at least graduate because I had enough credits and didn't need to walk.
Legally, you had to be able to graduate with the credits, but they didn't like to admit that.
Exactly.
Schools didn't either. Yeah.
And so I did graduate, but I mean, I had to sit through a berating of my principal telling me, "You're no good. You're not going to go to college.
Your family hates you. God hates you. Everybody hates you. You're a loser."
And I have a doctoral degree and still don't feel like I'm smart enough to go to school.
Yeah.
And these things are real and like they'll come at you. Like I was feeling pretty good about myself today, and I heard you telling that story, and I was like a little kid, like, oh, I'm no good, and wanting to cry. Those things will sneak up on you, and they'll bite you in the behind.
Well, yeah. At the end of every semester, the class gets a review of the professor. They write it out. And then the dean calls you in, or the department chair calls you in and says, well, here's what your students are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at those and you see one that says, this guy's the lousiest professor I ever had, those voices start raising their sound level.
Mm-hmm.
You start hearing that stuff and question yourself again. Then you step back and go, well, that kid's an idiot.
Right. Well, we've talked before about Presenting God's Children, which was a program that we were participating in. That was the Archdiocese in St. Louis's response to
It was a Catholic church, but actually that whole program spread to other churches in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I know the Episcopalians did the same thing.
And we would go and I would present sometimes to literally 300 people in an auditorium.
Right.
And, you would get 295 glowing reviews. This guy is the best presenter I've ever heard. This information is fantastic. I can't believe he did this in such a professional way. This is such difficult material. I mean, you saw him, you got him too.
Yeah.
And you'd have one guy who'd say, this was crap.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and I don't know who this guy is. He should not be allowed to leave his home. And the one that was like, it would be devastating to me.
It would be, except that there were also ones that you could find to rebuild yourself a little bit. They would say, the room was cold.
Yeah.
The chair was uncomfortable. Right. And so then you say, oh, well, this is bullshit.
Right.
So then you could dismiss it.
Right.
What you never saw were the 80 that said, oh my God, this was so helpful. This was so wonderful. This is the best speaker I ever heard. You expect those, you want those, but when you get those, you don't believe them because that comes back to codependency.
Right.
Codependents can never experience the positives.
Exactly.
They only can experience the negatives.
Exactly right.
So,
and that's truly unfortunate.
So if you ever become smart enough to go to college, then I'll congratulate you.
If and when.
If and when.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
So if you grew up in a family that matches the description that you hear us talking about, then certainly send us a note, let us know. And if you have any questions about that, send that in, and we would love to be responsive to people and talk about information that is on your mind and that would help you guys in your lives. Again, we do have a book out. We would love for you to pick up a copy from one of the links in the description below. The music that appears in Psych with Mike and Brett is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike and Brett.
Buy the book.
Buy the book. Go in.